to be unseen, they tend to see others more clearly. They're often the ones who notice when someone is left out. They're the ones who check in on others quietly, because they understand how it feels to go unnoticed. And maybe that's the paradox of this kind of loneliness, that those who have no friends often make the best ones, if only someone would take the time to see them first. There's a moment that often comes quietly when someone who's lived too long in loneliness begins to realize that waiting to be found might not be enough. That maybe, just maybe, healing isn't about finding people first, but remembering who you were before the silence began. Because friendship, real friendship, can only grow where self-trust already exists. If you don't believe your voice matters, you'll always quiet yourself. If you think your needs are a burden, you'll always hold them back. And so the cycle continues, unseen, unheard, unspoken. People without friends often live in the shadow of old experiences, moments when they felt too different, too sensitive, too introspective for the crowd around them. Maybe as children they were the ones who sat in the corner drawing, while others played. Maybe they were kind, but not loud enough to be noticed. Or maybe they cared about things others didn't. Over time, they began to wear that difference like armor, pretending it didn't hurt, convincing themselves that they preferred to stand apart. But difference isn't the problem. It's the meaning we attach to it. When you grow up feeling misunderstood, you start believing that something about you must be wrong. You begin to edit yourself down. You say less, feel less, expect less, and soon you become a version of yourself that no longer fits even the people who might have loved the real you. The psychology behind this is deeply human. Our brains are wired to belong, to tribes, to groups, to someone. It's an ancient survival instinct, but when belonging feels dangerous, when every attempt leads to pain, the brain learns avoidance as protection. Avoidance becomes a safety mechanism, and safety becomes loneliness. That's why many lonely people seem calm on the surface, because their nervous system has adapted to predict rejection before it even happens. They live in constant self-management, trying to avoid being too much or too visible. What they often don't realize is that the longer they do this, the more invisible they become, not only to others but to themselves. It's like dimming your own light just to avoid being noticed by the wrong people, only to realize you can't attract the right ones either. Psychologists sometimes talk about social self-concept, the way you see yourself through the imagined eyes of others. If you've spent years being ignored or excluded, that inner mirror becomes distorted. You start assuming that everyone will see you the same way, and even when someone looks at you with kindness, you doubt it. You think they're being polite. You question their sincerity. That's the cruel trick of prolonged loneliness. It doesn't just separate you from others, it separates you from your own ability to believe you could ever belong. But here's the thing about the human mind. It can learn connection again. It's not permanent. Just like a muscle that can regain strength, social trust can rebuild itself. Slowly through tiny acts of courage. It starts with small gestures, smiling back when someone makes eye contact, answering messages instead of overthinking them, letting yourself say yes even when you're scared. It's not about forcing social confidence overnight. It's about allowing life to touch you again, one interaction at a time. Because friendship doesn't come from perfection, it comes from presence. The willingness to show up, imperfect and real. What many people don't realize is that those who've been lonely for a long time often have incredible emotional depth. They think deeply, they observe quietly. They've spent years analyzing human behavior from the outside, so they understand things others overlook. They notice sincerity. They feel energy shifts. They can tell when someone's being authentic or when they're just performing kindness. That's why surface-level friendships rarely satisfy them. They crave depth, but fear it at the same time. So they build walls with windows. They want connection, but on their terms, through safety, consistency, and silence that feels warm instead of empty. And those are not unreasonable desires. They're simply human. But there's another truth beneath it. Friendship requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels terrifying when you've spent years protecting yourself. You can't form bonds without emotional exposure, and that exposure feels like walking barefoot through a field of broken glass when you've been hurt before. So many avoid it altogether. They say they're fine alone, but that's rarely true. They're just tired of being the only one who tries. Yet here's the paradox. When you stop trying altogether, you confirm the very fear that kept you alone. You prove your own isolation right. That's how the psychology of loneliness sustains itself. Not because you can't connect, but because the mind becomes too afraid to risk the unknown. But imagine if connection wasn't about being impressive, but about being honest. Imagine if friendship wasn't something you had to earn, but something you simply allowed. The truth is, the people who truly resonate with you won't require a performance. They'll meet you where you are. They'll feel the quiet in you not as absence, but as depth. Sometimes the first step isn't finding new friends. It's grieving the old versions of yourself who settled for less than you deserved. The one who begged for attention. The one who accepted crumbs and called it care. The one who silenced their truth just to keep someone near. When you heal those versions, something shifts. You start to attract from wholeness, not hunger. And that changes everything. There's a strange kind of freedom that comes when you stop chasing people and start understanding yourself. You begin to see that being alone doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been waiting for alignment. For people who don't just feel silence, but bring peace into it. For friendships that feel like breathing, not performing. Loneliness can become a teacher if you let it. It shows you what kind of company your soul truly craves. It reveals what kind of energy you bring into the world. And it forces you to build an inner life so strong that when the right people finally appear, you can meet them with presence instead of fear. Because here's a quiet fact. People without friends often become their own best observers. They develop self-awareness others might never reach. They spend time reflecting, questioning, growing. And that depth, though born from solitude, becomes the very thing that draws the right kind of people later. The kind of people who see not just who you are, but who you've become because of everything you endured alone. But healing from long-term isolation takes time. You can't rush it, you can't fake it. It starts with gentle self-acceptance, with learning to speak to yourself the way a kind friend would. When your mind says, no one cares about you, answer it softly, that's not true, I'm learning to care. When your thoughts whisper, you'll always be alone, reply with, I'm still open to being found. Because your brain listens, it adjusts. Neural pathways change through repetition, not miracle. The more you affirm connection, the more open you become to noticing it when it arrives. And it will. Because loneliness is not a permanent state. It's a season, a psychological winter that eventually gives way to new warmth if you allow yourself to thaw. The truth is, not having friends doesn't make you less human. It just makes your story quieter. But even quiet stories can be powerful. They can be filled with art, self-discovery, and meaning. Some of the greatest thinkers, writers, and